My name is Lisa, and I'm 37 years old. I live with my husband Larry. We both work for the company that Larry's dad started. Even though Larry's dad has retired, he turned a small construction business into a company that makes $300 billion a year. He bought other construction companies, and even though he could be tough, everyone respects his business skills. Larry was groomed to take over after his dad. He grew up in a privileged way and is very kind-hearted. I worry that he might struggle in the competitive business world because he can be hesitant and unsure. Larry himself admits, "I don't think I'm cut out to lead. I might just end up as a figurehead if I try." He doesn't seem eager to take charge of the company. We've been married for 10 years and lately I'm frustrated with Larry's lack of drive. Unlike him, I see myself as someone who makes decisions easily. During his active years, my father-in-law appreciated this about me and gave me important tasks to handle. Before I married Larry, I worked at a bank, so I'm used to handling finances and always thinking about numbers. After we got married, I quit my job at the bank and planned to focus on being a full-time homemaker. But then my father-in-law asked me to work for his construction company instead. Soon after I started, he began inviting me to join board meetings and asked for my input on how things were managed. Initially, some board members were unsure about having the founder's daughter-in-law involved in important meetings. However, as I consistently offered valuable insights, they started to take my suggestions seriously. Despite Larry also being on the board, he rarely attended meetings and everyone, including my father-in-law, saw this as normal. One day when I returned from a meeting, I found Larry casually watching TV. "Why didn't you come to today's meeting?" I asked, feeling angry. "You're an important member, you should take it seriously." He didn't seem guilty at all when he replied, "Even if I did go, I don't really understand what they discuss. Besides, everyone prefers your input, so it's not a problem, right?" I couldn't help but wonder if he was upset about me being involved in the meetings, despite his nonchalant remarks. My father-in-law has been teaching me all the ins and outs of running the business and seems to be preparing me to take over. I started to enjoy being part of the management, and soon enough, I was working hard to meet my father-in-law's expectations. About 3 years after I started attending meetings, my father-in-law retired completely. When important decisions needed to be made, the board members would come to me for advice, sidelining Larry. I had hoped that this would motivate Larry to get more involved, but instead he became even more disconnected from his work. Despite coming to the office in the morning, Larry would vanish by noon and spend the rest of the day at home. When he saw me there, he avoided talking about work altogether, seeming uninterested in the company's affairs. Meanwhile, my responsibilities at the company kept growing. After my father-in-law retired, the board members relied on me increasingly, and I started handling duties similar to those of a CEO. Our company is large with many employees, so I worked hard to boost sales and profits for their sake. Thanks to the efforts of our employees, our sales started to rise. I found running the company more and more intriguing, and I became deeply involved in my work. In contrast, Larry seemed to lose interest in his job, and his presence at the company became less frequent. Our conversations at home dwindled, and our relationship started to feel strained. "I met your sister Nancy today, and we had lunch together," Larry told me when he came home. Nancy, who's 3 years older than me, just went through a divorce about 4 months ago. It happened because she cheated, and things got really heated when her angry husband showed up at our parents' house. I was caught up with work, so Larry stepped in to calm down Nancy's husband. Despite the tense situation, Larry's gentle nature and calm personality managed to persuade him to leave peacefully. Nancy later told me, "Your husband is really something. He handled my furious husband so effortlessly." She was impressed by Larry's ability to diffuse the situation. Nancy was able to finalize her divorce after paying alimony. Since then, she seemed to see Larry in a new light. Before, she might have viewed him as a wealthy, sheltered son who wasn't particularly remarkable. But after seeing how he handled her husband's anger, she began to see him as a capable and respectable business owner. Nancy, who was now single after her divorce, might have seen Larry as a desirable catch because she always liked wealthy men. But I was so focused on my work that I couldn't even imagine such a thing. Little did Nancy know, Larry was just a figurehead at the company and didn't actually run it. Nancy's ex-husband had been an impressive employee at a foreign company. He had boasted to me at their wedding, saying, "I have a high salary and good looks. You must be jealous." He was indeed handsome, intelligent, and carried a sophisticated charm. I couldn't fathom why Nancy would cheat on such a wonderful husband. 5 months after Larry mentioned having lunch with Nancy, I came home one day to find Larry looking unusually serious. "Lisa, we need to talk," he said. It was the first time he had spoken to me like that, and I felt a sinking feeling in my chest as I waited for him to continue. "Actually, Nancy is pregnant with my child, and I want a divorce," he told me. I was shocked by both the request for a divorce and the news of Nancy's pregnancy. Stunned and speechless, I listened as Larry added, "Nancy plans to come over on our next date off to discuss this. I hope I can count on your support." I was shocked. "So you want to marry my sister?" I asked Larry. He looked troubled and replied, "It's not that I want to marry her, but if she's pregnant with my baby, I feel like I have no choice." Larry's usual indecisiveness frustrated me, and I sighed. "Well, if she's carrying your child, I guess we have to deal with it. Let's talk more when she comes over." Feeling like Larry and I couldn't make decisions together, I decided to meet with my sister directly to sort things out. Even though I had already made up my mind about getting a divorce, I felt I needed to talk to my father-in-law about the situation with the company. As someone involved in running the business as the founder's daughter-in-law, divorcing would make me feel like an outsider. The next day, I went to my in-law's house and shared exactly what Larry had told me with my father-in-law. My mother-in-law was initially excited about the prospect of having a grandchild, but she quieted down quickly when my father-in-law gave her a stern look. It seems she cared more about the grandchild than the company's management. After thinking it over, my father-in-law smiled and said, "Lisa, I want you to continue managing the company as you have been. Larry can do as he pleases. I'll handle the responsibility." It was clear that my father-in-law valued the company's management more than anything else, including his son or the prospect of a grandchild. Even though he had retired, as the company's founder with the majority of shares, his influence was significant. There were no executives who would defy his wishes. I had grown attached to my work and was reluctant to step away from it. With my job secured, it was time to discuss the future with my sister. On my day off, she arrived at my house with a confident smile and said, "Lisa, it's a shame you couldn't have a child." She then arrogantly offered me money as compensation and demanded that I leave the house immediately. My husband sat there silently, listening to our conversation despite being the cause of the problem. I was dismayed by his indifferent demeanor and responded, "It's fine to discuss divorce, but we also need to address custody and property division. Let's bring in a lawyer to handle this properly." "I never imagined you, my own sister, would end up with someone like Larry," I replied to my sister with a touch of sarcasm. She glared at me briefly but then composed herself. "I've come to realize it's not just about appearances or status. It's about who someone is on the inside," she said earnestly. I couldn't help but stifle a laugh at her sudden wisdom about my husband's character. Holding back my amusement, I said, "That's wonderful to hear. I hope you and Larry find happiness together." It seemed my sister believed Larry was more than he actually was, perhaps even the president of our father-in-law's company. It was clear she hadn't heard the truth from him. After our discussion, my sister decided to move in and arranged for movers. Knowing how impulsive she could be, I had already organized a new apartment with just the essentials. I also hired a lawyer to prepare documents for dividing our property and determining alimony. The next day, after moving my belongings out, I began negotiations for alimony and dividing property with my husband and sister, alongside my lawyer. My husband remained passive, showing little emotion, while my sister did all the talking. "As I mentioned earlier, I'm willing to pay whatever alimony you ask for, so please take your time to decide," she said. Upon hearing this, my lawyer decided to pursue alimony from my sister as well as my husband. My sister is already making alimony payments to her ex-husband. I had been informed beforehand that it might be challenging to claim alimony from her. However, since she offered to pay whatever I wanted, I decided to proceed with the claim. During the property division negotiations, my sister eagerly pointed out, "This mansion originally belongs to Larry's family, so it shouldn't be included in the division of property, right?" Remaining calm, the lawyer responded, "This building and the land are owned by the company, so it's ultimately up to the company to decide." It seemed even my husband thought this house belonged to his father. "Is that so?" "I thought this house was Dad's," he casually remarked. On the other hand, my sister was surprised and turned to the lawyer, asking, "Wait, does that mean I can't live in this house?" The lawyer replied professionally, "Since it's owned by the company, you can continue living here if the company agrees." Relieved, my sister exclaimed, "Oh, you should have said that earlier. It's fine because Larry, the president, will still be here." This statement caught the lawyer off guard, who burst into laughter. "What are you talking about?" "Lisa is the president, not Larry," he clarified, looking at my sister, who planned to marry my husband without knowing this crucial detail. She immediately turned to Larry and exclaimed, "Larry, you're not the president." Seeing his discomfort, I stepped in and explained to my sister, "Larry is an advisor without executive authority. I, on the other hand, am both an executive director and the president. Our father-in-law, who founded the company, was always the president. When he retired, he appointed me to these roles based on my performance, and there was no opposition from other executives. On the other hand, my husband was receiving an executive salary as an advisor, thanks to his father's arrangement, despite not having any executive responsibilities. It was more of a symbolic title than an actual role, and the salary was lower than what a regular employee would earn. This meant I was shouldering all our living expenses. Larry showed little interest in our household finances and didn't even know whether our home was owned by the company or his father. Although it was company property, my responsible father-in-law had always charged us rent. I had seen it as a standard rental arrangement, but the lawyer, still chuckling, asked, "Can we continue renting this house to Larry?" My sister was quick to react to the rent question. "Rent? Why would we charge Larry rent? It's company property, just let him live here for free." The lawyer then presented the rent amount, which startled both my sister and Larry, who seemed surprised to hear about it for the first time. "Looks like the rent for such a big house is pretty steep. I can't afford that on my salary," Larry remarked, realizing the financial strain it would pose with his modest executive compensation. Over our 6 years of marriage, Larry had exhausted most of his earnings. My own salary had also been swallowed up by high rent and living costs, leaving us with few assets to divide, mainly savings. After the lawyer left, my sister, now aware that the mansion she coveted was rented, appeared crestfallen and stared blankly. Meanwhile, Larry wore his usual grin. I suggested, "Why don't you move back to your parents' house? Your mom was thrilled about the pregnancy." Larry agreed, but inwardly I couldn't help but find the situation ironic, having to consider arrangements for a man who would soon be my ex-husband. I started to worry about whether he could responsibly raise a child, but I quickly dismissed these thoughts as irrelevant. Turning to my sister, who seemed to have forgotten about her own alimony situation, I asked, "Are you okay with the alimony arrangement, sis? You seemed confident earlier, but you're also paying your ex-husband, right?" Her expression shifted abruptly as she processed my question, snapping back to reality. "Alimony? I have to pay that too?" My sister exclaimed, clearly shocked and seemingly unaware of our earlier discussion. "You said you'd pay plenty of alimony earlier, but you didn't expect to pay it yourself, did you?" "My salary is really low," she continued, sounding incredulous. Larry and my sister exchanged surprised glances, and I couldn't help but feel like laughing at the situation. I had already finalized the divorce papers and alimony requests, so personally, it didn't affect me anymore. But watching Larry and my sister's reactions was almost comical. My ex-husband, who had remarried my sister and moved back to his parents' home as I had suggested, found himself caught in constant arguments between my sister and our in-laws. The root cause of these conflicts stemmed from the lie about my sister being pregnant with his child. His mother, hoping for a grandchild, was furious upon discovering the truth. Meanwhile, my father-in-law, who had never approved of my sister taking his son away from me, refused to even speak to her. He covered Larry's alimony payment in full, ensuring it was settled. Witnessing my sister's plea to our father-in-law, "Dad, could you please pay my alimony too?" was met with his stern response, "I have no reason to be called Dad by you," he retorted angrily. Disheartened and unable to achieve what she had hoped for, my sister left my ex-husband's family home abruptly, without saying a word, and disappeared. It seemed she had remarried my ex-husband solely to bear the burden of alimony, a decision that now seemed painfully naive. My ex-husband appeared to reconsider reconnecting with me, but his father rebuked him. "You're not the kind of man who should even think about starting a family. You can't even take care of yourself properly." Watching all of this unfold, I couldn't help but reflect on how we had reached this point. When Larry agreed to move back to his parents' house, I knew it was the right decision. While his mother was overjoyed at the prospect of a grandchild, I couldn't shake the feeling that Larry was simply not ready for the responsibilities of parenthood. His lack of engagement during our marriage persisted, and I doubted it would ever change. Seeing my sister's shock when she realized she had to pay alimony was almost amusing. She had been so confident earlier, but it was evident she hadn't fully considered the consequences. With her finances already strained, adding more payments would only worsen her situation. I couldn't help but wonder how she could be so naive. The negotiations for alimony and dividing our property proceeded smoothly thanks to my lawyer's meticulous approach. Everything was handled fairly and transparently. In contrast, Larry and my sister appeared bewildered and overwhelmed by the process. Their exchanged glances of surprise and confusion indicated they hadn't fully grasped the gravity of their circumstances. Moving out of the house marked a significant new chapter for me. I had already secured a new apartment and was ready to start afresh. Although I had once considered the house my home, leaving it behind felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Since it was company property, parting with it also symbolized letting go of the final ties to my life with Larry. After I moved out, tensions between my sister and my in-laws escalated. The deception about her being pregnant with my ex-husband's child caused an irreparable rift. My father-in-law, who had never approved of my sister, openly expressed his disdain. He saw her as the cause of disruption in our family, and this latest lie validated his concerns. When my sister asked my father-in-law to pay her alimony, he coldly rejected her plea. "I have no reason to be called Dad by you," he snapped, clearly furious. Her hopes for a comfortable life supported by my ex-husband's family shattered, leaving her without the expected support. In the end, my sister fled from my ex-husband's family home without a word, abandoning the turmoil she had stirred. Her plan to remarry my ex-husband and secure financial stability had disastrously backfired. Instead of finding security, she had only multiplied the problems for herself and those around her. My ex-husband, realizing the chaos he was caught up in, seemed to consider reconciling with me. However, his father, always the voice of reason, rebuked him harshly, saying, "You're not the kind of man who should even consider starting a family. You can't even take care of yourself properly." Ultimately, I moved on from the entire ordeal. I focused on my career and building a new life, leaving behind the turmoil that had engulfed my marriage. It was evident that Larry and my sister had their own paths to navigate, and I chose to detach myself from their complicated lives. The experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, responsibility, and the importance of making decisions based on personal integrity. I resolved never to reconcile with my ex-husband, even if he begged me. His betrayal with my sister and his indifferent demeanor had shattered any remaining faith I had in him. During our discussions, he lost his executive position and now works as a temporary employee. His behavior throughout our marriage and after the affair made it clear he wasn't reliable or trustworthy. His lack of commitment to our relationship and the company showed he wasn't suited for the responsibilities he had. Seeing him reduced to a temporary employee only reaffirms my decision to move forward without him. Being CEO has become the most important aspect of my life. It gives me purpose and fulfillment, keeping me focused and motivated. I take pride in improving the company for our employees and their families. Being CEO is now central to my identity, and I can't imagine giving it up. I'm not considering remarrying after our breakup. Starting a new relationship isn't something I'm interested in right now. I've been through too much emotional turmoil to even consider starting a new relationship. Right now, my focus is on myself and advancing my career. There are many goals I want to achieve, and I'm determined not to let anything distract me. I've kept in touch with my father-in-law, and he's been a great source of support and wisdom throughout everything. His advice has been invaluable whenever I face tough decisions or need guidance. My commitment to the company feels like a marriage in itself. For the sake of my employees, I dedicate myself fully to its success. This means hard work, dedication, and a passion to ensure our business thrives. I'm committed to providing job security and a stable future for our team, and their well-being is a top priority for me as CEO. This journey has taught me resilience and staying true to myself despite personal challenges. I've steered the company through steady growth and maintained a positive impact on our employees' lives, which motivates me every day. Ultimately, my focus remains on leading the company and supporting my team. I'm driven to create a successful future for all of us. While my personal life has had its challenges, my professional life gives me stability and a deep sense of accomplishment. This is where I draw my strength and where I choose to direct my energy moving forward.